Game of Thrones, a fantasy action-packed series that became one of HBO's most successful shows, having fans anxiously waiting for the release of each episode, and notoriously letting people down with the finale. The show itself made us laugh, cry, scream, and jump in joy. While its ending may have really sucked, the entire wild ride throughout the show was filled with fun and interesting characters, good storylines, and let's not forget, plenty of wiener, 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 wiener. The writer behind the book series that inspired the show, George R.R. Martin, took inspiration from several people, places, and events from real history. One such example is when Jon Snow is betrayed and killed by his own men in the Night's Watch that he was chosen to lead. This scene alone was directly taken from the Ides of March, in which the Roman Senate plotted and carried out the assassination of Julius Caesar, because they saw him as a threat to their own power. And just like the Roman Senate did to Julius Caesar in real life, the traitors in the Night's Watch took turns repeatedly stabbing Jon Snow. This event is further mirrored in the show with Ollie, a young boy that Jon Snow took under his wing, bearing resemblance to Brutus, a young boy that Julius Caesar took under his wing. Both Ollie and Brutus took part in stabbings of their respective father-like figures, serving to be the ultimate betrayal to Jon Snow and Julius Caesar. This is just one of several real-life inspirations George R.R. Martin used when writing the Game of Thrones series. But today, we'll be looking at monuments the Game of Thrones creator, George R.R. Martin, borrowed from real history. Before we get started, we'd like to also introduce two very special guests and friends of ours who collaborated with us on today's video, Historia and Pax Romana. We will include the links to their channels as well as the other two parts of the real Game of Thrones history series we're all working on together. While King's Landing is the largest city within the Seven Kingdoms, a close second is OLDTOWN. This city is a clear knockoff of the Ptolemaic city of Alexandria, Egypt, having not just one, but two famous locations that are clearly based off Alexandrian monuments. The first one of these knockoffs that Mr. Martin borrowed from history, and notably from the famous Egyptian city of Alexandria, is the Lighthouse of Alexandria. In real life, this was one of the seven wonders of the ancient world and one of the first lighthouses to ever exist. In Game of Thrones, this massive tower is referred to as HIGHTOWER. It's portrayed as a seven-sided stepped lighthouse rising from Battle Island, standing at an impressive 800 feet high. This height makes it the tallest structure in all of Westeros, yes, even higher than the Wall. The real-life lighthouse was actually the first lighthouse in the world. Unfortunately, the Lighthouse of Alexandria was destroyed by several earthquakes and is no longer with us. The second monument that George R.R. Martin clearly borrowed from real history and also implies that OLDTOWN is based off Alexandria is the Citadel of OLDTOWN. As one of the largest libraries in the ancient world, the real-life Great Library is estimated to have held 40,000 to 400,000 papyrus scrolls prior to its demise. It's easy for us to sit back and wonder how much valuable ancient information was forever lost during its destruction. So yeah, thanks for burning it down, Julius Caesar. Jokes aside, we can't fully blame Caesar, though he is largely to blame due to his actions during his pursuit of Pommy in Egypt. When a fleet of Egyptian boats blocked the harbor of Alexandria, he ordered them to be burned down, which inadvertently caused the city itself to catch fire, resulting in the library burning. But it is often a misconception that the library burned in this one single catastrophic event. Evidence points that this was just the start, and that the library gradually fell apart due to the lack of funding and other surrounding conflict over time. Now, unlike the Great Library, the Citadel of OLDTOWN in Game of Thrones never underwent destruction and is seemingly much bigger. The Citadel was also controlled by the Order of Meisters, a group of scholars who would advise the Lords of the Seven Kingdoms on scientific, medical, and historical matters. Another obvious real-life monument portrayed in Game of Thrones is the Colossus of Rhodes. There's no doubt that Martin based the Titan of Braavos off of the Colossus. Portraying the Greek sun god Helios, the Colossus of Rhodes was destroyed by an earthquake in 226 BC. It was erected in Rhodes, a Greek city of the same name. Clearly. The monument stood roughly 33 meters tall, or roughly 108 feet, which is roughly the same size as the Statue of Liberty, though we kind of think it's a bit cooler than the Statue of Liberty. The Colossus is also one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Like the Colossus, the Titan of Braavos was a part of something in Game of Thrones lore called Wonders Made by Man, a list of 8 comprehensive wonders that is clearly based off of the real world. Wonders of the Ancient World list. I wonder what the Great Pyramid of MEEREEN could be based off of. Pax Romana, would you like to solve this one for us?
Sure. The Great Pyramid in Game of Thrones is based on none other than the Great Pyramid of Giza, being the only one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world that is still standing. The Great Pyramid of Giza is arguably the most well-known monument in the entire world. The fact that Cleopatra and Caesar live closer to our present time than they did to the construction of the Great Pyramid of Giza is already a testament to its long-standing greatness. There's also a case to be made that the Great Pyramid of MEEREEN is loosely based on the legendary Temple of the Feathered Serpent in present-day Mexico. Like the Temple of the Feathered Serpent, the Great Pyramid of MEEREEN has terraces. This could also link it to the likeliness of the Ziggurat of Ur. At the end of the day, though, we think it's fair to say that it's most like the Great Pyramid of Giza. Unlike most of the monuments mentioned in this video, Hadrian's Wall is one of the only few monuments that isn't on the real-life wonders of the ancient world list. In Game of Thrones, the wall was purposed for keeping the wildlings out of the 7 kingdoms. In real life, Hadrian's Wall was built by the Romans in Britain to keep out those filthy, dirty Picts. As you may know, the Picts would later go on to become the Scots. At that time, though, the Picts were portrayed by the Roman historians as savages, hence the reason the wall was built in order to separate them from Roman-occupied Britain. The wall in Game of Thrones is 300 miles long and a whopping 700 feet tall, whereas Hadrian's Wall was only 73 miles long and 20 feet tall at its highest point. This places the wall in Game of Thrones in a greater likeness to the Great Wall of China, which was also used to keep out nomads and was much more similar in size. But George R.R. Martin confirmed that he was more so inspired by Hadrian's Wall, especially considering the fact that much of the material in the series places a predominant emphasis on that of Eurocentric cultures, with the least being placed on influences originating from the Far East. So now we're going to be handing the mic over to Historia, who will be covering the last 2 monuments on our list that we theorize might have snuck their way into Game of Thrones. Think you can handle this one?
Absolutely. Hopping into the first of the last 2 monuments, we have the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. Or, I guess you could say the Hanging Gardens of Nineveh, but we're not going to get into that debate right now. Legend has it that the Hanging Gardens were built by Nebuchadnezzar II, who ordered the construction as a gift to his wife, who was homesick for the gorgeous mountainscape and vegetation from her native lands of Media, which is now in present-day Iran. While there are several mentions and depictions of Dorne's water gardens in the Game of Thrones show, there is no mention of the origins or construction of the site. In the books, though, that's a different story. Literally. In the A Song of Ice and Fire novels, George R.R. Martin writes of Prince Marin Martell raising the water gardens as a gift to his new bride, Daenerys Targaryen, in order to mark the union of Dorne to the rest of the 7 kingdoms. Yeah, I know that is totally not in the show, but interesting nonetheless. But the fact that both Nebuchadnezzar II and Marin Martell both erected massive garden monuments as gifts to their brides is a clear indication that the water gardens are synonymous with the Hanging Gardens. We see what you did there, George. The Mausoleum of Halicarnassus was an ancient Greek tomb located in present-day Turkey. It was built as a final resting place for Mausoleuum, the ruler of Caria, in the 4th century BC. Like many of the real-life wonders mentioned in this video, the Mausoleum of Halicarnassus was also one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. The Mausoleum of Halicarnassus most similarly represents the exterior of the House of Black and White in Game of Thrones. You remember? That one place Arya wasted a lot of time at with all of the faceless men? Yeah, This location, from an exterior perspective, was seemingly inspired off of the Mausoleum of Halicarnassus, though not entirely representative of it. Some have been keen to point out that the Mausoleum was famous for their sculptural reliefs, and that in Game of Thrones, the Crypt of Winterfell similarly has sculptures, but of dead Stark kings. A third theory is that the Great Sept of Baelor is actually reminiscent of the Mausoleum of Halicarnassus, with its towering spires and intricate design. Though the Great Sept of Baelor consists of more Gothic architecture, whereas the Mausoleum of Halicarnassus had a more of a classical touch to it. It's also possible that the Mausoleum of Halicarnassus inspired the House of Black and White, the Crypt of Winterfell, and the Great Sept of Baelor. If so, this would make these three monuments the most original out of all the ones mentioned in today's list. Kudos to you, George.
There's so many countless examples throughout Game of Thrones, such as the city of Qarth clearly being based on Carthage, and Dothraki being based off of the Mongols, Huns, and several horse-riding Native American cultures, such as the Cheyenne and the Sioux. Additionally, there are several other structures in the show and book series that are pretty likely to have been based off of real-life monuments. We could keep going on, but we're going to leave that for part 3 of our Game of Thrones collab series, where Pax Romana will wrap everything up. If you haven't watched part 1 on Historia's channel yet, we've included that in the description below. Please, please, please check out both channels and subscribe to them. Both push out great content that you would enjoy if you enjoy our channel. In the meantime, do you think George R.R. Martin is a thief or a genius? Also, are there any other monuments or locations in Game of Thrones that we left out that you can think of as being based off of real-life ones? Let us know what you think in the comments below. Until next time, this has been Amateur Archaeology.
Wiener next to another wiener. Wiener, 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 wiener.